Hi, this is Frank with a Frank Opinion. In my last video, I introduced information with regard to the Powell Memorandum. This was a strategic plan that was written by then attorney for the tobacco industry and member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 1971 at the request of the Chamber of Commerce that felt that corporate America needed a strategic plan to begin to influence greatly and, in essence, eventually dominate domestic and foreign policy of the United States. Well, the plan was tremendously successful because over the last 4 decades, that plan, for the most part, has come to fruition. And today's video was just the second one in a series of 3 on the effects of the Powell Memorandum, is going to display that. I'm hiding something here. Okay, American democracy, we've been hacked. Well, of course, the Russians have hacked the DNC, they hacked John Podesta, Hillary, they've been hacking a lot. Well, actually, what I'm about to say is hopefully not going to surprise you. We've been hacked for years through the effects of the Powell Memorandum by corporate America and the wealthy elites, which is the reason why our wages have been stagnant since 1979, while corporate profits and cash have zoomed. A wonderful research report in 2014 by 2 university professors, Martin Gillens of Princeton University and Benjamin Page of Northwestern University, asked the question, who governs? Is it really the citizenry through majoritarian rule in the United States through a democratic process, or is it not? What they concluded is, for the most part, it's not. That ordinary citizens have statistically 0 effect on public policy. They studied over 1,779 policy issues, and they concluded that unless citizens agree with the direction that corporate America and the wealthy elite want to go on a particular issue, it looks like we have some influence, but in fact, we're just riding coattails. We're not really having any influence. They actually found when a majority of citizens disagrees with economic elites or with organized interest, they generally lose. Moreover, because of the strong status quo bias built into the U.S. political system, even when fairly large majorities of Americans favor a particular policy change, they generally don't get it. They conclude by saying, we believe that if policy making is dominated by powerful business organizations and a small number of affluent Americans, then America's claims to being a democratic society are seriously threatened. Think oligarchy. And they do mention the word oligarchy in their report. In the last video, I talked about all the elements that Lewis F. Powell Jr. indicated had to be dominated or greatly influenced by corporate America in order for it to succeed in terms of its goals. I know a friend of mine from way back, high school, who's on my Facebook feed, told me and posted that he's reading Jane Mayer's Dark Money. And he did this in response to my first video of yesterday talking about the Powell Memorandum. And Mel says she shows how people like the Koch brothers, Richard Mellon Scaife, John Olin and others, put Powell's ideas into operation, providing the money and support over 3 or 4 decades. 3 or 4 decades. 1971 Powell Memorandum, then the next 3 or 4 decades. They supported and funded individual scholars, scientists, intellectuals, think tanks, chairs or institutes within universities, right-wing media, and the list goes on. And particularly important are 2 elements. Politicians, make sure that you get politicians in place that favor corporate and business interests, and make sure, alternatively, that you remove politicians that don't support as much as we think they should, meaning corporate America, our interests. A key paragraph, as I mentioned in the last video, was the one related to the courts and this is where Lewis F. Powell, and I'll read from his memorandum word for word, under our constitutional system, especially with an activist-minded Supreme Court, the judiciary may be the most important instrument for social, economic, and political change. Think, as I mentioned in the last video, Supreme Court decisions, Vallejo versus Buckley, that said that money is speech, Citizens United, whose majority opinion was written by current Justice Anthony Kennedy. Corporations can spend whatever they want on campaigns. And then the McCutcheon versus FEC later on in 2014, I believe, that said that when wealthy individuals can spend as much money as they want on elections. Another friend sent a wonderful article written in 2003, his name is Gary, or my Facebook friend, from Mother Jones, that basically describes how the Powell Memorandum emphasis on the judiciary has been carried out on the state level, to the extent that corporate money going after the state courts, Supreme Courts, etc., as well as attorneys general, have made it possible, quote here from the article, by the 1997-98 term, defendants, meaning corporations, were winning 69% of the time, and insurance companies, doctors, and pharmaceutical firms were winning nearly every case. It's a terrific article, and I'll post the a URL so that you can read it. So here we have American democracy, my opinion, hacked. We have a research, exhaustive, that says that ordinary citizens have statistically zero impact on public policy. And I wanted to kind of display a little bit in a visual of how this kind of works day to day. So you'll have corporate and wealthy interests that want less dollars spent on a variety of programs for the public good, for the public interest. Okay, so think safety net. These people here don't want the wage cap on Social Security, which is currently at $127,200, to be uncapped or to be increased. God forbid that we share some of our wealth with folks that have much less to take them into their retirement years. So they want less dollars. They want less dollars funding public education, and they want less dollars on other things like infrastructure if it's coming out of their pocket. You have another group of corporate interests that want more dollars spent by government. And the best example right now is the current president. I don't like mentioning his name. Our current president proposal that the defense budget be increased significantly, I think to the tune of $50 billion. Well, there are some companies that are just going to love that. Raytheon, Bechtel, Lockheed Martin, etc., are going to love more dollars spent on defense. In terms of these public good areas, well, if privatization of Social Security happens in part or whole, mutual fund companies, the financial services industries will love more dollars coming into their funds. In terms of education, if it's privatized, vouchers, charter schools, public monies feeding, well, you already have hedge funds that already fund charter schools. They also will support anything that has to do with privatization of education. And the same thing over here. You have another group here that simply doesn't want anybody to finagle with their wealth. So, would they be in favor of the elimination of the estate tax or quote death tax? Of course, they'll have more wealth. So between these three sectors of the corporate and wealthy elite, the public good, ordinary citizens and consumers are left in the cold. What do we concentrate on very often? What is the media concentrating on? Social issues. Right to life, death penalty, gay, transgender rights, etc. And that's always the headlines, etc. And let me tell you, the corporate interests and the wealthy elite want you to focus on that, because down here, in these little things over here, these are instances at the state level and also the Supreme Court where corporations are fighting citizens and consumers. And this is where, as this paper that was sent by Gary indicates, corporations generally win and consumers and citizens generally lose. So we have a 30-40 year progression stemming from, and of course some of this predates 1971, but the plan, that 7-page plan that I've offered to send folks or scan and email it to you, the Powell Memorandum, fascinating, brilliant 7 pages, has made possible a plan to grab hold of, a simple plan. All you need is money, all you need is power, and you can put it into effect. Lots of examples of how that has been carried out. A plan for the control or dominance of the corporate sector for domestic and foreign policy. Another example of that, and I'll leave you with this, is our current Secretary of State. Rex Tillerson. Where does he hail from? ExxonMobil. How about that?